Somewhere beneath the mountains of Lower Silesia, in the darkness that has swallowed 60 years of secrets, a train sits waiting. It has not moved since 1945. And no one, not the Polish government, not NATO intelligence, not the treasure hunters who have given their lives to finding it, has ever brought it back into the light. It is the winter of 1945. The Eastern Front is collapsing. The Soviet Red Army is pushing westward with brutal, mechanical fury. 2 million soldiers, 10,000 tanks, the sound of a civilization ending rolling across the frozen Polish plains. The Third Reich, once a monster that stretched from the Atlantic to the gates of Moscow, is dying. And dying empires do not go quietly. They hide. In the final months of World War II, the Nazi High Command launched one of the most audacious operations in the history of organized theft. Across occupied Europe, the regime had spent 6 years stripping nations of their wealth, gold bars pulled from the vaults of conquered banks, jewels pried from the necks of the condemned, priceless artwork lifted from museum walls, weapons-grade documents, currency, and technology that had no business existing in any sane world. All of it had to disappear before the Soviets arrived. All of it had to be moved. Quietly. Desperately. In the dead of winter. The operation was given a name that history has never fully confirmed. What is confirmed is this: somewhere in the final weeks of February 1945, a heavily armed convoy moved through the Ural Mountains, the Soigori, in what is today's southwestern Poland. Then called Niederschlesien. Lower Silesia. Nazi territory still, but barely. The train was not on any official manifest. SS soldiers lined the route. Civilian witnesses were removed. Station masters along the line received orders they were not permitted to repeat. The locomotive pressed forward through snowstorms and blackout conditions, moving without headlights, guided only by men who knew exactly where it was going and exactly why no one else could know. Inside the carriages, sealed, reinforced, guarded at every junction, was the extracted wealth of a dying empire. Gold. Documents. Art. Possibly weapons. Possibly things that were never meant to see the post-war world at all. The train entered the tunnel network beneath the Soigori Mountains, part of a vast underground construction project known as Riese, meaning giant, a labyrinth of reinforced chambers and passages carved by slave laborers under conditions so brutal that thousands died before the tunnels were ever used. The train went in. It did not come out. What happened inside those tunnels is the question that has consumed historians, governments, and obsessives for 8 decades. The most credible theory goes like this: the SS unloaded the train deep inside the tunnel system, concealed the cargo in reinforced chambers, then sealed the entrances. Precisely. Deliberately. Using their own engineers, men who were afterward, by some accounts, never seen again. The train itself may have been buried inside a side passage, the tunnel mouth blasted shut with military-grade explosives. The Soviets arrived days later. They tore through Silesia like a storm through glass. They found the tunnel entrances. Some of them. They found evidence of recent excavation, recently poured concrete, fresh blast marks in the stone. They found tools left behind in haste. They found the echo of something massive that had passed through. But they did not find the train. The NKVD, Stalin's intelligence apparatus, men not known for their patience or their mercy, interrogated every surviving German officer they could locate who had any connection to the Riese project. Some of those men disappeared into Soviet prisons and were never heard from again. Others talked. None of them knew everything. The information was compartmentalized by design, distributed in fragments across too many minds to reassemble cleanly. The Soviet files on the operation were sealed. They remain partially sealed today. Here is what history does not tell you cleanly. In 2015, 2 men, a German and a Pole, approached authorities in the Lower Silesian region with an extraordinary claim. They had a map. Not a reproduction, not a rumor. A physical document, aged and authenticated, that they said had been passed down through a family connected to the original SS operation. The document, they claimed, showed the exact location of the sealed entrance. The Polish government mobilized. ground-penetrating radar was deployed across a stretch of hillside near the town of Wałbrzych. The results were, and this is the official statement, anomalous. There was something beneath the surface. A void. A structure. Consistent with a tunnel, or a large buried object, approximately 100 meters long. The excavation began. And then it stopped. The team withdrew. The site was secured. The government issued a statement that was careful, measured, and said almost nothing of substance. What they found, or did not find, has never been fully disclosed. Stand at the entrance to the Ksia's castle tunnels on a February morning, when the fog comes down from the mountains and the cold bites through everything you're wearing, and try to feel the weight of what is buried in these hills. Thousands of slave laborers died in these passages. They were fed almost nothing. They were worked through frozen winters in conditions designed to kill them efficiently enough to serve a purpose but slowly enough to finish the work. They knew what they were building. They knew what it was for. And they took that knowledge with them into unmarked graves scattered across a landscape that still, 80 years later, does not know all their names. The gold, if it exists, was bought with their suffering. The documents, if they survive, may contain things the post-war world deliberately chose not to process. The weapons, if there are weapons, belong to a chapter of human history that the century has tried, not always successfully, to close. The treasure hunters still come. They come with radar equipment, and old maps and theories stitched together from declassified Soviet files and family testimonies and the kind of obsessive certainty that only unsolved mysteries produce. Some of them have spent decades and fortunes in these hills. A few have died here, accidents in unmapped tunnel systems, cave-ins and passages that were never meant to be found again. The Polish government has quietly acquired land around several suspected sites. The questions remain open. The mountain keeps its silence. Somewhere in the darkness beneath the Soigori, in a tunnel sealed by men who are long dead, a train sits on rusted rails, and carries with it not just gold, but the weight of everything a civilization tried to bury when it knew the world was watching it be judged. The train has not moved. But it is still out there. And it is still waiting to be found.